Okay, and so just a reminder, I am going to try to keep roll. Um, so not because it's required, but because I will give extra credit for coming and participating in the lectures. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And I want to start talking. Wait, let me just get everybody. He's here. Xiaotian's here. So I want to take a minute here. Well, first, I just wanted to take a look at the map, right? I polled the class and for locations, and this is what I got. Not everybody responded, but this is 10. So yeah, it's pretty exciting all over the place, right? Caribbean as well as Asia. So hello to everybody out there. And then I wanted to take a look then at the assignments, and particularly to emphasize something which maybe isn't entirely clear. Is this two parallel paths of assignment, right? In other words, is that there's two real threads of writing assignments for the class, and they're quite different, both in terms of what you're doing and then in terms of the objectives, what I want you to learn from each, right? There's the analytical essays, which is essay number 1. And that one is due next week. The first submission of the first analytical essay is due next week. On Friday, I'm asking you to do, next week. On Friday, I'm asking you to give me a pre-writing of that, some idea of what you're going to argue. And the essence of the analytical essay is to make an argument. It's thesis-driven. You make an argument, you produce evidence to prove the argument, you have an introduction, body full of evidence, and a conclusion. So that is the first type of essay, this analytical essay. All right. And again, the due dates is this week, there's nothing due. Next week, the first submission, and then I'll mark it, you revise it, and you give it back to me for a second submission. And it's the second submission grade that counts. And a couple reasons to emphasize this is because it really is important to stay on top of this. Do the pre-writing. I will comment on your pre-writing and help you form an argument. And then give me an essay on number 1 for essay submission number 1. I probably will have a lot to say, and you probably won't like the grade. But that's okay, because you can just rewrite it for submission number 2, and you'll learn a ton. So I've been getting a lot of questions about, like, I'm really nervous, I don't understand the assignment. No problem. Follow the posts, right? Do the pre-writing, right? I can give you input. Do the first submission. Even if you're not clear on it, I can give you input. And by the 6th week, when you're doing that second submission, you'll feel much better and you have a much stronger sense of what you need to do. And then off we are, essay number 2, and then essay number 3, right? So by the end of the semester, you'll have a much stronger sense of what these are standard college essays in American universities. This is what everybody asks for, type 1 analytical essay. Okay, so that's the type 1. The other type is not typical. This is the Brownian analysis. And this is not thesis driven. You're not being asked to do an argument. What this is all about observation and evidence. And I had one sort of panicked email. I'm not going to tell who it is, but I'm going to tell you this. It was a panicked email going, wait, I just read the assignment for 1B, right? The physical description, which is to take an object. For 1A, you're going to choose an object. And then 1B, you're going to take that object and write a 2 to 3 page description. How on earth can you describe an object for 2 or 3 pages? This pen, for instance, how could I write a 2 to 3 page description of a pen, right? It is completely possible, and I will show you evidence of people using objects like this. And I'll show you examples of people writing Brownian analysis on objects like this. And I was going to actually give you an example today, but then I got one of the first submissions. Is Kit here? Kit isn't here, so I can really talk about him. I want to show you what he turned in as this is so great. Take a look at this, right? This is an example. This is the assignment which is due Friday, which is for the Brownian analysis on Friday, a 1A. you're supposed to propose an object, and you just write a paragraph description of the object, and I'll let you know if it's a good object or it's not a good object. And then next 2 weeks from that, you do the full description. This is what Kit wrote, and just glorify in the wonderfulness of the description, right? I'm going to read it. Okay. This is a custom top boxing glove. It is made of top grain, smooth cow leather, dyed in maroon, with a waxy sheen around the fist, and metallic gold with a shimmer around the thumb and the wrist. These pieces of thick, supple leather wraps around 3 different kinds of foam and is held together by off-white polyester top stitch thread. 3 different kinds of foam, all of which have different softness and rigidity, are stacked atop each other, giving the glove a different softness in every section. Handling the glove in my hand, the leather gives off a smoky, dry leather smell, catching a whiff of chemicals from the dye every so often. It is a 10-centimeter wide Velcro closure, which opens with a loud shock, as though the maker were making a guarantee the glove would never come loose under any circumstances. As I wear the glove, I can feel the smooth and, moisture wicking synthetic fabric. I can also feel the constant pressure of the foam lining of the glove. The glove weighs about the same as an iPhone and is as big as an A4 paper. Just tell me, just this glory of this. What is good about this description? And I'll say is that, first place, description is fantastic. Other one is thinking about how this description could be expanded to 2 to 3 pages, right? What could Kit add to expand this, right? So first place, what's working? What makes this a good description? Anybody? What makes it a good description? How does he do it? And don't anyone tell me it's not a good description, because you know it is. How does he do it? Give some examples, Henry, right? Yeah, he gives examples. He's really specific about the glove, right? Like, it is made of top grains, smooth cow leather dyed in maroon with a waxy sheen about the fist and metallic gold with a shimmer around the thumb, right? Zooming in on these really specific examples when you're looking at the glove, what you see. Yeah. So specificity, right? He's very specific about the glove. What else is he doing? What else is working here? I just want to give it a shot. How about the senses? Experience. That's good, right? The feeling, like what you get when you touch things, the physical experience of the glove, when you put your hand in it, how it feels, right? When you look at it, how it feels, how it shows, right? Also, like the experience of smell, share the feeling, right? The smell of the glove, and the sound of the Velcro going like that, right? The weight of it, how it fits on his hand, right? It's terrific. Mabel, you want to you typing? So the other question is that, like, given, I think this is just a paragraph, right? It's a single space paragraph. So it's actually, if you double spaced it, it'd be about half a page. But how could then Kit work from here? A lot of metaphors, right? A lot of really descriptive language, right? Like, right? There are similes actually, but that's the right idea. Like this, like that, right? Giving you all sorts of images of the glove. I mean, when you read this, you really can see it and almost feel it. I was so inspired that I gave him 6 points out of 5. So what could he expand on in this description to complete to get it up to 2 to 3 pages? And I think, I mean, he's got the whole thing here, right? You just by expanding on what he's done here, I think, like, you don't even need to do more. You just need to do more, like add more detail. Like what else could he say about this glove? Anybody thoughts about it? What else? Right? Come on, Kit, make it 2 to 3 pages now. What can he add to get up to 2 to 3 pages? I mean, one thing to think about is that, you know, I mean, you could even just start breaking it into paragraphs and like thinking about what the paragraphs might be. Um, but maybe you could say where the glove is made from. It's interesting. Actually, in the Prowdy analysis, I want you to avoid sort of backstory and history. That's a good idea, but for the first, and actually later you can add that. But for the first part, I want you to stay focused on. It's a great question. I want to stay focused on the physical itself. One of the things Henry's done is he's given us no details about where he got the glove from, who gave it to him, what it means to him. Does even play bass or say box? We don't even know. And he's left all of that out and just focused on the object. And for part one, that's exactly what I want you to do. Every item comes with a backstory and a history, but for the moment, leave that to the side and focus on what is there. Like this pencil, this little, I'm sorry, I have to take off my glasses. There's the logo here. You probably can't see it. You know, that typeface is interesting. What kind of typeface is? There's little type here. There's this orange metallic color here. There's, you know, the shape of that. Regardless of where I got it or who gave it to me or what it means to me, for the first part, or where it was made, the story behind it, for the first part, we're focusing on the physical description of it. Yeah, Henry, great. Yeah, excellent point. Anyone else how to expand this? Attractive shape. And this is another thing, is that Henry's got all these details, but he actually doesn't actually give an overall view of the item, right? He might start it out by saying, you know, giving us a sense of what the shape is as a whole, and then sort of zoom in on the details, right? There's one way of even thinking about using paragraphs, maybe one paragraph approaching the object, you know, for what it looks like from 5 feet away. Another paragraph, when you pick it up, how heavy is it? What feelings do you have? Then put it in, and then looking at the stitching and things. There's just so much to say here. This is what we're going to do. And Kits, this is an excellent start. So by Friday, what you want to do is pick an object that you think will lend itself to this kind of analysis, right? You know, and I suggest in the video on the Prowdy analysis, I talk about an espresso maker. Which actually is a great object now, and it's unfortunately full of espresso, so I can't take it out. But you know, even something like this pen thing or mechanical pencil will work, just because there are actually a lot of things to say about that. So get going by Friday. Pick an object, do the pre-writing on the Prowdy analysis, and I will comment extensively on it to help you get you on your way. Do it now, because next week we're going to be knee deep in essay number 1. So if you do it now, you'll get a head start, and next week we can turn the page and just focus on essay number 1. Right? Got me? Okay. So yeah. So other questions about that process, or any quick questions on the analytical essay, which we're going to talk about more. No? Okay. So let's take a look. What else do I want to do? I want to take a look at Pinsky. Oh, I'm sorry. The only other thing about essay number 1 that I wanted to say is that there is the thesis generation. There's 2 assignments on Canvas. One is looking at Hacker's definition of an effective thesis. Take a look at that. I give an example of 5 practice theses, and so you read Hacker, you look at the example, and then do that. And then there's also an assignment about thinking about your thesis for this essay, trying to start the process of writing essay number 1. So there's also that up there. So, you know, get to it. Okay, so any other questions about that? Okay, email me if you've got specific questions. It's probably more efficient. I want to take a look then at this poem, Shirt, right? So thinking about the theme of our course, right away, here we are, right? We're in the realm of the object. And even just what this poem is doing Kit, you just missed. I just went on and on about your brownie analysis. You can watch the video. Shirt. Mute while you're typing, Kit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So wait. So no problem. There's again, attendance is not mandatory, although I think it's super helpful. Super helpful to me. Otherwise, I'd be talking to myself. Okay, so shirt. So right now in the poem, here we are in the realm of an object. And if you think about the scene of the poem, the poet is sitting there and doing a type of Brownian analysis, right? He's got an object, which in this case is a shirt, and he's looking at it. So the way to frame the poem is thinking about that. Is like picking up an object which is everyday, familiar, and this is exactly the Brownian analysis that you don't pay very much attention to, and then looking at it extremely closely, right? And this is what he's doing. Now, he doesn't only do physical description, so it's a little different from the Brownian analysis, but he is thinking about it a thing. So let's take a look, and we'll start at the start. I'm not going to read the whole poem. We don't have time, but I want to read the beginning. So shirt. The back, the yoke, the yardage, lapped seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar, turned in a sweatshop by Koreans or Malaysians, gossiping over tea and noodles on their break, or talking money or politics, while one fitted this arm piece with its overseam to the band of cuff I button at my wrist. Right? How about that? The way it begins, right? He's looking at it as a shirt. And what does he see? Right? He's picking it up. And a lot of these words are extremely technical. The back, that's the back, obviously. But the yoke, the yardage, lapped seams, none of that is easily intelligible English, right? These are, I think, technical words. Maybe some of you sew and you know them, but I don't sew. So this is all, what the hell? But they're technical words about sewing. So what does he see as the poet picks up his shirt and he starts looking at it? What does he see? How about it? What do you make of it? Imagine the scene as poet picks up the shirt, looks at it very closely. It's like, oh, the shirt. And then what does he see in the shirt? Are you going to give it a shot? Lapped seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar, turned in a sweatshop by Koreans or Malaysians, gossiping over tea and noodles on their break, or talking money or politics, while one fitted this arm piece with its overseam to the band of cuff I button at my wrist. Any senses about it? What are you seeing?
I think it's saying that the shirt is very perfect, I guess. It's very well made.
It's very well made. It seems like an expensive shirt. But yeah, the stitching is perfect, right? Nearly invisible, right? Yeah. So it's beautifully made shirt, right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hauke would look at that and say, so I see, you obviously have good taste. You must be high status, not only to afford an expensive shirt, but extremely well-made shirt. That, so it must be a high status thing, right? What is Pinsky here? What does he pull out looking at the shirt, right? He sees the beauty and the skill that went into the making of it, right? I mean, he sees something that Hauke doesn't, which is the people that were there. The shirt didn't just magically appear out of nothing, did it? Somebody, somewhere, sewed it, right? Is that the stitches don't just get there, right? And when he looks at it, it's not actually an obvious thing to do, right? It's to start thinking like, wait a second, how did that happen? Somewhere in the world, somebody sat there and with a great deal of skill and probably not a lot of pay, made this perfect invisible stitching, right? Is a totally different sort of thing. It is exquisite workmanship, and which means there's an exquisite workman out there, or workwoman, in fact, which is what he speculates, right? So it's to look at the shirt, and how can Mace look at it and think about it as a status symbol, right? But here Pinsky is really focusing on, no, there is a human origin. Somebody stitched this thing, right? Let me just keep reading. The presser, the cutter, the wringer, the mangle, the needle, right? All of these are parts of a sewing machine. I have no idea what they are, but to be honest, I'm guessing. I think they must be parts of a sewing machine. Again, some of you probably sew, and probably you're like, Professor Nardi doesn't know jack, but I'm guessing. The presser, the cutter, the wringer, the mangle, the needle, right? The union, the treadle, the bobbin, the code, the infamous blaze at the Triangle Factory in 1911. Okay, I don't know if any of you know that reference. Does anybody? So check it out. I got actually a funny story about this. This is a really famous. Wait, that doesn't look right. This is a famous incident in U.S. history. There we go. Where in 1911, in this building, which is downtown New York, there was a sweatshop, which is a factory basically for making clothes. And most of the women at that time, most of the people sewing at the time were young, almost kids. So they would line them up with sewing machines. They would lock the door so that they all had to work, and they would keep them in there in really hot, conditions. So at one point a fire started, and because there's so many people in the room, the fire and there was so much cloth, the fire spread really quickly, and I can't remember how many people were killed, but a lot. It was quite terrible. So it's a famous incident of American labor, and because of this, a lot of laws were passed to prevent that kind of abusive relationship. Just as a kind of aside, this building now it's part of New York University, and I went to college in this building, and I even actually I took classes on the floor that the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire happened, and it was weird. It was really weird. People were talked about ghosts and things, but you really felt it when you thought about that how many people had died in that space, and now we're like, let's study English literature. Yeah. Questions about that? The history? Okay, then we'll go back to the poem then. So there's this history, right? When he's raising this, the unions and the blaze, he's talking about that, and the rest of this little bit is about that poem. If you can imagine that building burning. So let me just read this bit. The infamous blaze at the Triangle Factory in 1911. Oh, he tells us how many died. 146 died in the flames on the 9th floor. No hydrants, no fire escapes. The witness in a building across the street who watched how a young man helped a girl to step up to the windowsill, then held her out, away from the masonry wall, and let her drop. And then another, as if he were helping them up to enter a streetcar and not eternity. So imagine the scene, right? Is that because there was no way to escape. There were too many people. There were no fire escapes, and the doors were locked. So the only way to get out was through the windows, which of course went just to the 9 floors to the street. So imagine these people stepping out the window and crowds watching that. A third, before he dropped her, put her arms around his neck and kissed him. Then he held her into space and dropped her. Almost at once, he stepped to the sillets himself. His jacket flared and fluttered up from his shirt as he came down, air filling up the legs of his gray trousers. Okay, so how about this, right? Let's go back to that scene. Remember, man looking at shirt, right? So he's looking at the shirt. He's looking at that exquisite workmanship, like Mabel said, right? And Kit, right? Talking about that, like what he's seeing is the quality of the thing. And from that, his mind goes to this scene of disaster, right? How about that? What is Pinsky telling you about the shirt, right? What does he want you to see when you look at this exquisite object, which is his shirt?
I think he wants us to see the means to the end.
The means to the end. What do you mean by that? That's exactly right. He wants to see the means to the end.
It's a process and what people do and what it does to people to achieve something that is desirable, I guess.
That's exactly right. You look at that shirt and you're thinking like, oh, that's a nice shirt, right? How did it get like that? Who did it? What did it cost? You might know the price of the shirt, but you know there's a whole human cost too. Those shirts in Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, they're probably pretty cheap. How did they get cheap? Right? What caused them to be cheap? Same thing as like you have this beautiful shirt, but like who made it? What was their life like? You know, what is the history behind this object? What is the history behind the labor that produced this object? Right? You know, to take it back to Hellcat, like you talk about status. That's a great shirt, super high status. Okay. But how do you, you know, but is that the full story? You know, like, I mean, to look at status, but there's also people there too, right? Now, other thoughts about this, about what he's doing with the shirt. I'll check my time. Or questions about it. All right, so let's go look at the end. There's a, hold on, let's see if I can. I'm just going to quickly read this over. Hold on. Like heart cranes, bedlamite shirt, shrill shirt, ballooning. Wonderful how the pattern matches perfectly across the placket and over the twin bar tack. So here he's come right back and he's looking at just the way the pieces of cloth are cut together. So even though different pieces of cloth, the pattern is continuous. You can't see this. You can't see that it's different pieces of material pieced together, right? Again, the exquisiteness of the object, the workmanship, which went into this object. Corners of both pockets like a strict rhyme or a major chord. Prints, plaids, checks, houndstooth, tattersall, madras, the clan tartans. So these are all different kind of patterns of shirt. Invented by mill owners, inspired by the hoax of Ossian to control their savage Scottish workers. So again, he turns from that looking at so closely at this object to thinking about the history, where these patterns came from, who invented these patterns, where have they been taken from, right? All those patterns, you know, they had an origin, you know, like now some designers like, well, let's use this pattern and this pattern, but they came from somewhere, right? Patterns have a history. Patterns invoke cultures, invoke stories, invoke people, right? That all went into developing this design of the shirt. The kilt devised for workers to wear among the dusty clattering looms, weavers, carders, spinners, the loader, the docker, the navy, the planter, the picker, the sorter, sweating at her machine in a litter of cotton, as slaves in calico head rags sweated in fields, right? So here, going back over, even before the shirt is being sewn, you know, where did the cloth come from? Who made this? Who picked it, right? And then finally, George Herbert, who's a famous English poet. Your descendant is a black lady in South Carolina. Her name is Irma, and she inspected my shirt. Its color and fit and feel and its clean smell have satisfied both her and me. And the backstory to this is it used to be, and I think a long time ago, but it used to be that a really high-end shirt, an expensive shirt, it would come with a little slip of paper saying inspected by, and then someone would sign it. So you had a sense of that somebody, not just a machine, but somebody actually, a human being actually looked over the shirt, checked it for imperfections, and guaranteed that this was a high-quality, well-made thing. So that's what he's talking about. I haven't seen it in a long time. In fact, I don't know if I've ever seen that period. I've just heard about it. So it might not be done anymore. George Herbert, your descendant is a black lady in South Carolina. Her name is Irma, and she inspected my shirt. Its color and fit and its clean smell have satisfied both her and me. We have culled its cost and quality down to the buttons of simulated bone, the buttonholes, the sizing, the facing, the characters printed on black on neckband and tail, the shape, the label, the labor, the color, the shade, the shirt. So thoughts about this. What is Pinsky doing to this object? And in the background, how we might compare what Pinsky does with our two texts that we want to relate for essay number 1, Ice Age and Halkett. So what does Pinsky do for the shirt? What is he adding to it? He looks at the object. What does he do with that object? How about
I think he's giving the object like life, like a secret life of things. He's personifying the shirt.
He's giving the object life, right? He's personifying it, right? He's giving it history for one. It didn't just appear somewhere, but it has this long history going back to when it was a plant. Somebody picked the cotton for this thing, right? Yeah, treating it as a living creature, right? Yeah, excellent. Yeah, right. Not just an object which conveys status, not just an object which costs money, but something which came from somewhere and is going somewhere, right? Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Other thoughts? What's he doing? How would you tie him to, say, the squirrel in Ice Age? How would you tie this text to, say, the squirrel in Ice Age or Halkett's argument? Anybody have a sense how to do it? How to make a connection? What kind of, and this is the object of the essay number 1, right? How to make a link between this text, what Pinsky is doing to his object, and what Halkett talks about, or that image of the squirrel, with the acorn thing. How about it? Any ideas? One could start with the squirrel, right? Does the squirrel have any sense of the acorn as having a history, right? I mean, when you watch that text, I mean, like the acorn's nothing, right? It's just an object to be consumed. We don't really think about it as, that could be a tree someday, or like a tree that came from a tree. None of that stuff. I mean, I don't even know if there's any trees in the clip. I can't remember. But there's no sense of that object having a beginning or an end, right? It's just there as in movie critics call it a McGrath, something like that. It's just there as an object to make the squirrel hungry, right? It doesn't have any history. Other thoughts? How to make the connections? Or to Halkett, right? I mean, Halkett talks about objects as Kit.
I think how I would connect this with Halkett is the shirt is just a shirt, but what like for people in the know is the pattern, is the history behind the shirt, and the process in making the shirt that makes it expensive. It makes it special.
Yeah, right. Halkett is just all this stuff, all these labor. For Halkett boils down to, is it a high status item? Right. It's all about, so all this work, all this thing. She doesn't think about that. Her interest is the production of status. And Pinsky's not. He's not really talking about whether how the shirt makes him feel. No, that's not right. Halkett doesn't give things history, right? She's just interested in the end product, which is as a status object. That is extremely well-made shirt. It shows that you know a lot about shirts, that you've bought that shirt, and when you wear it, you're going to those in the know who look at it and say, "Oh, that stitching is exquisite," right? Then you're going to convey to the right people if you know that you have extremely good taste, which is going to raise your status. And that's what Hauket is interested in, is the ability of an object to produce status. Who it was that stitched it is not a concern. And I think she's right in the sense is that, you know, the normal way to relate to an object such as a shirt is not to think about who made it. And this is something Pinsky's drawing attention to because we forget, or we aren't told, or we don't want to know. Yeah, excellent, Kit. Other thoughts about that? Yeah, so again, to return to essay number 1, the object of the essay is to make an argument like that, right? To draw some sort of connection between a text like this poem and Ice Age Hauket, right? And Kit was suggesting that there's a point where, you know, Pinsky's kind of filling in the history that goes into the status making, right? Is that all that exquisite, what Mabel called exquisite craftsmanship, exquisite workmanship, comes from a place and comes from people, right? And so if Kit were to write that, the thesis would be something like Pinsky. I'm going to write this in chat. Robert Pinsky's poem supplies the history and humanity that make up the. I'm just making this up as I go. That make up the. Now I'm stuck because I stopped. Right, I stopped. When you stop, you always get stuck. Supplies the history and humanity that make up the object. And I guess you could say something like how can, in contrast, ignores that human element. I put in chat, right? Robert Pinsky's poem supplies the history and humanity that make up the object. Hauket, in contrast, ignores the human element. That's just a quick sort of idea how you could make a thesis out of this, right? From what Kit's argument was. You know, two texts together, and then an argument which links them both. Okay. Questions on that? And I'm going to very quickly just take roll because, like I said, it's not required, but Lily is here. Hiccup's here. Chensu's here. Maple's here. You guys can think of questions as I'm wasting time. Irene is here. Dawson's here. Yelly is here. Here. Chen is here. All right. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming. Like, I really appreciate having an audience. Okay. So anything else about this poem or about the paper, right? And let's go back for a second to that sketch of the schedule of due dates. Find it. There we go. Any questions about how this would relate to that conversation about Pinsky would work with the writing assignment? And here we're talking about the analytical essays, right? The first column, not the Prani analysis. Pinsky's actually, like I said, is a good Prani analysis in ways, but focusing on the analytical essays, right? Drawing connection between this text and either Ice Age or Hauket, right? Questions about that? So your mission between now and so in the third week, your mission this week is to try to generate a thesis. And if you do it, and you do the assignment about suggesting a thesis, I will comment extensively, and you'll have a good start. Okay. That's my priority for grading this week. Is there's two things, but the thesis especially, because the first submission is due Friday next week. Mabel's typing. Yeah, absolutely. Right. If you have questions, Mabel just wrote that she'll email me with questions. You can, but absolutely do that thesis. It's the assignment is on Canvas. Do it. There's no. I'm not going to grade it right or wrong. It's just a flat grade. If you do it, you get the points. And the idea is to break up that process of writing. In other words, if you start the writing next week on, say, Wednesday, you're going to freak out because you're going to be like, what is this creature that I'm trying to do? Then it started now. If you, by Friday, you generate a thesis, you give it to me, I give you a reply over the weekend. Then next week when we're really digging into the essay and you're really trying to crank out 2 to 3 pages on this comparison, you'll be in a much better way because we'll already be talking. Right? Wednesday is like, oh no, what am I doing? No. Start now. Same thing with Brownian analysis. Find an object that you like, get it going. 1A is due this week, so you want to. 1A is the object proposal. You do that, and then 2 weeks from now, when you're doing that physical description, we've talked about the object. You've already got Kit got its great start on it, and you're in much better shape. Okay. So the other text I wanted you to take a look at for today, and we're going to mainly talk about next week, is the short story. And I just want to kind of seed it for a minute, which is just take a look at it and start thinking about how to. Oh, there's something else I want to do, but what if we have time? Well, first place, how to read it, and then also what kind of argument can you make about this text? And so I just want to start with this, right? This is the first paragraph, Casca of Amontillado. I just want to start with the first paragraph and read it. And what I want to think about is what you learn about the narrator, right? This is a short story. We have a narrator here. He's telling the story. What do you learn about this guy who's telling you this story from the first paragraph? So yeah, the Casca of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. Right. So he hurt me, injuries. He, something that really caused him pain or cost him money, hurt him in some ways. I did my best. I bore them as best I could, right? I didn't complain. I said, all right, yeah, Fortunato, you're an ass, but what am I going to do? That was, I let it go. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge, right? So it was one thing to injure me. That was okay. It's a completely different thing to insult me. That we cannot let go. What do you make of the narrator? And what does this first sentence tell you about the narrator? What kind of person does that, right? It's actually a proverb, or what kids, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Words aren't a big deal. If you don't hit me with a stick, I'm okay, right? This is the flip side. Injuries are okay, but words, we got a problem. What do you make it? Who is this person? What kind of person says this?
A very sensitive man.
Sensitive. And man is probably, it's very hard to imagine a woman saying this, frankly. A very sensitive man. Yeah. Sensitive to what?
So insult to his ego.
Insult to his ego, right? All about respect, face, my name, my reputation, right? Very sensitive to insult to his ego, right? Yeah, it's one thing, you steal something from me, but nobody knows, big deal. It's okay, I can deal with that. But don't you dare, break my ego. Don't you dare make me lose face, right? Yeah, a very sensitive man, and particularly sensitive. and being a man here, I think is not incidental. I think it's like, you know, very sensitive to his sense of masculinity, right? Yeah. How about, let me keep reading. You who so well know the nature of my soul, he's addressing us, the reader, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to the threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, right? Not now. I don't have to have my revenge right now. It might take a long time, but I'm going to get it, right? At length, it doesn't have to be immediate, right? But I'm going to get it. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled. But the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. And impunity means you get away with no consequences, right? So I must not only punish, not only do I have to punish this guy for having insulted me, but I have to do it with impunity, which means that I punish him and I walk away with no consequences, like absolutely no repercussions for me. I get away free, right? This is what he's saying. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt to such who did the wrong. And that's second sentence, what it means. It is equally unredressed. So unredressed means, and the revenge is no good. Okay, you do me a wrong, in order to feel like I evened our score. Okay, first place I have to hurt you. I have to get away with it. And then here he adds something else. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. And make himself known means, so I have to get you back good, I have to get away with it, and you have to know, right? The person that's being revenged upon has to know exactly who did it. They have to see their revenge. They have to like, oh, so-and-so did this. And then you get away with it. And this is his idea, what he's trying to accomplish. The narrator is trying to accomplish against poor Fortunato. I don't know, maybe he's an asshole, but Fortunato is the object of this, right? He did something, and the narrator is going to get revenge now. Okay. So questions about this Kit started us off really well with this idea is that we've got a person who's extremely sensitive, extremely focused on reputation, on face, on yada, yada, yada. Questions about the narrator? Okay. All right. So the other thing, I mean, we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to focus for a minute on how then, as you're for the next class, right? Read this back over and thinking in terms of this is for the analytical essay, right? So what kind of thesis can you make, right? How can you tie this story to the squirrel in Ice Age or to Halkett's argument, right? And one place to look is this thing that where the narrator kind of sets Fortunato up, right? So there, it's carnival, and if you've ever seen images of carnival, everybody's drunk and running around in kind of crazy costumes. And the narrator comes across Fortunato, who's dressed like in this crazy, he's got like bells on and things like that. And here I'm down at the bottom of 14. I said to him, my dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkable well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe, and that means a barrel, like a little cask, of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts. Okay. And so he says, like, I've got this barrel of wine. It's supposed to be really good, but I'm not sure it is. And then Fortunato says, how? Said he. Amontillado, a pipe, impossible. And in the middle of the carnival. So right at this point, Fortunato says that this is not possible, and it is not possible. The narrator is lying. Okay, so you have a point here where Fortunato knows that the narrator is lying. He knows this is ridiculous. He knows it is not going to happen, right? So he's not going anywhere with the narrator, who he doesn't even particularly like. And yet, by the middle of the next page, he goes. And I'm going to blow the story with you, or for you, if you haven't already read it. It ends really badly for Fortunato. Indeed, the narrator gets his revenge, right? Fortunato ends up screwed in every way, knowing that the narrator did it, and the narrator is going to get away free. How does he do it? How does he get Fortunato, who knows that the idea of this wine, that the narrator has this super high class, totally expensive, delicious wine? Fortunato knows this is ridiculous, and yet he follows the narrator anyway, right? Even with in the full knowledge that the narrator must be lying. Fortunato ends up following the narrator and gets revenge on him. I have my doubts, I replied, and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado? Clearly here, Fortunato's like, you're full of it. This is enough. I have my doubts. Amontillado! And I must satisfy them. Amontillado! The narrator, right? As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchese. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me. Lucchese cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. And there he is. Fortunato's going to follow. And then there's, it actually flips around. The narrator is like, well, it's really unhealthy. We have to go down to my vaults. You've got a cough. And he's like, no, come, let us go. I have no engagement come. Let us go nevertheless, right? Now, Fortunato is the one. Let's go find out if it's Amontillado. Do you see what I'm getting at, right? Is that the narrator has hooked Fortunato, who really should know better. Okay. Questions on the text overall? Any questions about it? Yeah, so next week we are going to start with this. I specifically want to talk about how to tie this to Halkett. You have a high status item, the wine, or Halkett or Ice Age. Yeah. So question about this? All right, so take a look at this. Look at the story specifically. The narrator, who's crazy, clearly, really violent and super sensitive. Okay, that's one thing, one way to think about the story. And then also his ability to manipulate Fortunato. How does he do it? How does he pull this off, right? What does he know that enables him to trick Fortunato like that? Okay, questions on that? Okay, any other questions about where we are at this point? The essay itself, the schedule of things due. Anything else? I think you're good. Anybody else? Yeah, the one thing I really want to stress is this sense of thesis, right? Let's just take one more example here. Simple short writing piece, this, right? So this is one of the short writing pieces on reaction pieces on the lesson. I am gonna finish up in the next minute. Right. So me and Sugar turned the corner to where the entrance is. I forgot who this is. I'm sorry. So me and Sugar turned the corner to where the entrance is. But when we get there, I kind of hang back. Not that I'm scared. What's there to be afraid of? Just a toy store. But I feel funny, shame. But what I got to be ashamed about? If we push the analysis further, we will see that these children before have not understood the concept of money. Back to the beginning of the story, when Miss Moore asked about their parents' income, we can say that they are indifferent to money and class. For them, money may not be so important to understand. All right, this is great. I mean, this is exactly, that's shame, right? I mean, isn't right here what they're learning is what Halkett's told us? In other words, can't you make an argument that Sylvia and Sugar basically read Halkett, right? They said it's not just money; it's all about status. You know, it's not just that. It's not just being able to buy things, right? Is having money means you can walk into the store and feel like you belong there, right? That's really what. Forget the sailboats and the paperweights, right? What you really get from money is status, is this ability to sort of belong, right? Like, isn't that what she's saying? And how does that relate to Halkett, right? Yeah, I mean, it seems like right there you're really in a place where the really interesting arguments about what the story is saying specifically about money and class. Thoughts about that? Well, this is what you should be doing right now, which is looking back at the stories, thinking about what kind of thesis you can make, what kind of argument you can make. Okay. So I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna hang out for another 10 minutes or so, or longer if you need. And thank you guys for coming. Check on Canvas, do the assignments, and remember, thesis, Brownian analysis 1A. Those are the things. Get these done this week, and you'll be moving on beautifully with the schedules. Okay? Anything else? Okay, so have a great day in some cases, night in others. And anybody else wants to talk, I'm here for 10 minutes. Bye-bye. Thanks, Mabel. Thanks, Henry. Yeah, I hope you have a great evening, night, not even evening. Henry, you got another class, right? Yeah. Well, at least I don't feel bad keeping you up late. You're sad. Have a good day, Henry. Evening, night. 交线to awesome. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Mabel, you too.
Professor, I have a question regarding the essay, the thesis essay.
Yeah, Kip.
Yeah, so I just sent something over. Can the format be something like this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is the kind of standard, intro, body 1, body 2, body 3, 4 against. I see what you're doing. Body 4, if there's time, and then conclusion. Yeah, the only thing is that you're not necessarily for or against here. You're really thinking about like that kind of formula essay. Used to be called the 5-paragraph essay. Works really well for a controversy, right? Are you for like raising taxes or against it?
Yeah.
Right. But here, it's a little more complicated argument. You're not for Halkett or against her. You're making a connection. So the modification I would say would be something like intro, where you present your thesis, and then body 1, where you give evidence to support your thesis. Body 2, where you give evidence to support thesis. Body 3, where you might do something else. You might even talk about how your thesis maybe needs a little bit of help, or maybe there's problems with it. And then the conclusion, you wrap it up. And you might even say why your thesis is important. But that basic format, intro, body, conclusion, is exactly right. But that really rigid for against structure, that I want to move you away from.
Okay. I was thinking like it would be how two texts agrees with each other and don't agree with each other. And
You can
disagree.
totally do that. For instance, in the case of Pinsky and
Okay.
Halkett, right? You can have two. You can have one paragraph talking about how actually they're very similar, right? They're both talking about a high status item, right? They're both talking about an item which has workmanship, which it conveys class. And then you can say, but wait a second, they're not the same. They're similar, but they're not the same. And then the next two paragraphs talking about perhaps where Pinsky critiques Halkett and says, you can't just ignore the labor, right? You can't just ignore the people behind that. And then you can have two paragraphs maybe about, what Pinsky sees that Halkett is just ignoring. So one about similarity, and then one about how Pinsky adds the pain of labor, and then Pinsky adds maybe another paragraph about the history. Pinsky adds history, and then a conclusion going like something like, yeah, Halkett's a great argument, but she's kind of missing things, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. We can relate more than two texts, right?
Don't. Just keep it to two. The problem with doing more than two texts is that then it becomes very thin.
Oh.
Right? Is that like what you'll be zipping through things too quickly, and you won't have any time to really dwell on it. So if you feel like yourself running short, like you don't have enough, first place, don't panic, because when I read it, I'll have a lot of suggestions. But the answer really is look for more examples, right? So go back to the poem or go back to Halkett, quote something, and then talk about how that fits your thesis.
Mm.
That makes sense?
Okay. Yeah.
But keep it to two.
Okay.
The problem with three is that it means that you're running at a really high speed, and you're passing too quickly through the scenery. You don't actually get time to stop and look.
Okay.
Great questions, Kit. Really, really good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's important stuff. Anybody else want questions about the paper, how to approach it?
I actually have a question regarding my Brownian analysis as well.
Yeah.
You said in the feedback, extend the description and add even more detail.
Yeah, you weren't here, but I made everyone else read it. Hold on, let's get it up.
Yeah, I felt like that was everything I had. Yeah. Anything else to add?
Well, here's the thing. Here's why I think you probably felt like everything you had is because you cover a lot of ground, right? You do sense of smell, you do touch, you focus in on some of the details like the stitching and the layers of foam, right? So you put a lot of stuff in there, right?
Mm.
The next step is just to slow down and add more, right? That's the next step. For instance, it is made of one of the suggestions from the classmates was overall shape, right? Is you could actually start, because as we kind of zoom very quickly in this description into the details of it. You can actually start by just like standing 5 feet away. What do you see? And then sort of zoom in. And even think about how you approach it, right? So one paragraph can be about just standing 5 feet away and looking at it. And then when you pick it up, how much does it weigh? What is it? What feelings do you have in your fingers, right? And just adding details like, for instance, the top grain smooth cow leather dyed in maroon. Okay, so more, right? Are there like maroon? Like, are there variations? Are there scuffs on it? Are there different shades of maroon? Like are there straps that are the same color? Just going even more into that, like smooth. What kind of smooth is that? Is it like smoothness of skin? Is it glossy? Is it like you can squeeze even more, and that is actually the assignment, is to squeeze as much as possible out of it. Just get more and more detailed and to see how far you can actually take it.
Okay.
Try it. Just keep describing. And I think what you'll find, if you just go into, like you mentioned the text somewhere, I think.
Sorry, what?
Let's see. Oh, here, this stitching, right? What more can you say about that stitching? Like, what other details can you, like,
I don't know.
how big are the stitches? How many are the stitches? Like this
Oh,
off-white color, is what kind of off-white is it? There's a lot of off-whites. Like, is it bumpy on your finger? Is it? You know what I'm getting at? Just more.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw.
Hmm?
I saw one of our classmates say, maybe you can say where the gloves are made from. Wouldn't
Yeah. This one
wouldn't yeah.
this is something to hold for a moment, right? I think as Henry said that, and it's a good idea, but for the moment, I want to focus on physical description, right? So for the moment, exactly as you're doing now, not worrying about the stories around the object, where it came from, what it means to you. I mean, maybe this boxing glove came from your father and has a really complicated history like that. For the moment, put that aside. Like right now, just the physical, just the descriptive aspect. The objective of the assignment is to get used to thinking about writing as exploration, right? Not just exhausting something, but really thinking when you're writing, what can you really do to generate ideas? And what I hope you find out is that as you describe, and maybe you already did feel like this, is as you describe the object, it becomes more interesting. Right? You start seeing aspects of it that you haven't seen before.
Yeah, I guess.
I said, Jiku went. You guess. We'll try it. Give it some time because you did a lot on this. But try it, and I think as you come back to it, you'll find it easier to do than you think.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thanks a lot, Kit.
Yeah, I think that's all. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Wilson, did you have a question?
Hello, sir. Could you hear my voice?
Perfect.
Yes, in my opinion, I think prompt analysis is more interesting than formal analysis because
it is absolutely.
I prefer describing details. So yeah. I will try to use prompt analysis to describe something. Because in reaction A, I didn't find the central argument easily.
What I hope we get to is you start seeing the connection. Is that the interest is exactly what you just said. It's like going into something, right? Is really describing, understanding, thinking about something. Hopefully, as you do that, you'll see the connection to the formal essays, which are actually in some ways very similar, right? Is in the formal essays, in some sense, what you're doing is going into the details of the text. And the more into the details of the text you get, the easier it is to write, and the more interesting your writing will be to you and your reader. So absolutely, and hopefully, as we go on, you'll start to get see the connections between the two assignments, which are should be related.
Yes. Should we share our feeling in prompt analysis?
Not exactly. Later on, there will be more room for that. But the way, for instance, Kit here, he's really when he talks about feeling, it's really senses. What does he smell? What does he hear? What is the feeling of touch? What those the very physical feelings of touch and smell and experience like that. He's not doing emotions, right? There's no. I love boxing gloves, right? That he never gets to that. It's to the extent that there's feeling, it is about senses rather than your emotional connections.
I'm very interested in the sentence. I read you. Enjoying the pleasures in close looking. So at that time, in my opinion, I think maybe I can share the feeling or ideas.
That's right. That it is fun to, in this case, it's fun to write, but it is fun to describe. It's fun to experience something. Yeah.
So I should lay more emphasis on describing details.
Details. It's all about details.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean,
Thank you so much.
like
You
Kit was
are
saying. I mean, Kit said like I feel kind of finished, but I don't think he is. And when he goes into like he's got all these wonderful details, but the more you look, the more you see. Right.
okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilson.
Have a good day. Thank you, sir.
You too. Have a great night. Great night.
Thank
See you.
you.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.